Hello, IELTS winners. One of the most difficult questions or most puzzling questions which are which are reported to be the most difficult ones are these true false not given questions. So, most of the participants struggle with false not given questions at the initial stage, and there are some simple strategies which are very important. I am at this site, as you can see, mini-ielts.com, and if you go there and write down "do literate women make better mothers," you'll get this passage, and here we are going to answer a few true false not given questions together, reading the statement one by one and answering the questions. There are a few fundamental strategies to answer true false not given questions, and I'm going to discuss them here while doing this passage with you. The first is to understand the question very clearly, and if there is a number based question which says like some, many, numerous, most, majority, pay attention to those words, because a little change in the word would make a huge change in the meaning of the overall statement. So let's see here. About 1,000 of the women interviewed by the researchers had learned to read when they were children. So some women are interviewed, as we can see, and the statement says that they learned to read when they were children, and the number given is about 1,000. So about 1,000 learned to read when they were children, which means there were women who were interviewed, and about 1,000 of them learned to read when they were children. Okay, now, so there are certain keywords, as you can see, women who are interviewed by the researchers. So if you read this, you will find that women who are interviewed, I'm just scrolling through the passage, as you can see. I can see 3,000 written here, 3,000 women interviewed, nearly 3,000 women, some of whom had learnt to read as children. So obviously here we have the answer, some of whom had learned to read as children. Now some of whom, out of 3,000, some had learned to read as when they were children. Now from 3,000, if there are 10 women, then too some would be fine, like some of them. Or if there are 100 women, then too the word some suffices. So if you look at this, out of 3,000 women, some of them had learned to read as children, as you can see. I'm just trying to show you here. So I'm not very clear whether it was about 1,000. So the statement about 1,000, I don't have any clue about it. I don't have any direct evidence about it. My answer to this would be not given. I'm not sure. There is no conclusive evidence. Let me go to the next question now. It says before some crusade or something, illiterate women had approximately the same level of infant mortality as those who had learned to read in primary school. Now, see, these kind of questions. This is clearly a comparison question. There is a comparison happening between two groups. Which are the two groups? The two groups are illiterate women had approximately the same level of infant mortality as those who had learned to read in primary school. So there are two groups, illiterate women and the one who studied to learn to read in primary school. So I'll call them, for the sake of argument, as literate women, those who were able to read. So the comparison is between literate and illiterate. And what they are saying is the point which is compared is infant mortality. Infant mortality means, like, out of 1,000 kids who are born, how many die as infant itself. So basically, if I look at this particular statement is trying to compare the illiterate and literate women before some program. The National Literacy Crusade, I'll call this as a program. So what was the difference? And if it says had approximately same, which means according to the statement, it seems like literate and illiterate women had the same kind of number with regard to infant mortality. So this is what, see, so I've spent almost like 1 to 2 minutes or 1 point whatever time, 2 minutes, let's say, to understand the question. Now, this is something which is very important, that you understand the question by paraphrasing it the way I'm doing right now. And so now I can go to the passage, and of course, most of the questions are in sequence. So I look at this after this paragraph. Infant mortality, I'm looking at this word. So I can see here died in infancy. The women were asked how many children they had given birth to and how many of them had died in infancy. Research teams also examined surviving children, all this. So let me just go to the next paragraph, because now the findings must come. Investigators' findings were striking. In the late 1970s, the infant mortality rate for the children of illiterate mothers was 110. So for illiterate, it is 110 per thousand. At this point of their lives, those who later went to learn to read had a similar level of child mortality of this. For women educated in primary school, now see, there is, this is one which is educated. So I have to look at this line and see if it is, what is it saying. The infant mortality rate was significantly lower, 80 per thousand. So these are the two groups. The ones which are illiterate, as shown in the first three lines, is at 110, whereas the literate women, which is given at the last line, is 80 per thousand. All right. Literate means the ones who studied in school when they were kids, and this is the comparison made here. And if, as you can see very clearly, there is a huge difference between 110 and 80. And if this says that before this crusade there were approximately same levels of mortality rate, it would absolutely be false. It is not same. 80 and 110 are two different numbers. The answer has to be no. Okay, now again let's look at this question 8. Before and after this child mortality rate for the illiterate women stayed at 110 deaths for each 1000 dada. Before and after national, so this the child mortality rate for illiterate women. So for illiterate women there wasn't any change according to this after National Literacy Crusade. So what is this national? We don't have to break our heads against National Literacy Crusade. It is some kind of mission to educate the elderly women or elderly population, and we don't have to understand it. In every country such kind of efforts are made, and yeah, you can use your general knowledge to go with a little bit of anticipation, and you don't need to understand everything. Okay, so before and after the program, the mortality rate for the illiterate women, which means women who remained illiterate, all right, was about 110. So if they have not got education, there should not be any change, is what I assume. And so before it is 110. This thing we have already seen. Illiterate mothers were around 110. If you look at the third line in this paragraph, and I have to go to after the crusade, so after the program. So after, I can see in 1985 they have done, like it says, after infant figure for those who remained illiterate and for those educated in primary school remained more or less unchanged. So if it is unchanged, which means which was about 110, and that is why the answer has to be yes. That for illiterate women there wasn't any change even after crusade. If they had not gone for any education, there wasn't any change there. And even for those who were who studied in primary school, so there wasn't any change. So as you can see, all these questions are comparison questions, and you have to identify in which two groups the comparison is happening, and you can make out. Yes, but look at the sequence. Look at the way I am answering these questions. You're supposed to go to the question, paraphrase the question, and then answer it. The women who had learned to read through the National Literacy Crusade showed the greatest change in infant mortality. So those who have learned through this crusade, so whatever adult education mission was there, and who who took advantage of this mission showed a great change in mortality levels. So let's see. For those who learned to read through the campaign, as you can see here, this is the line. Mortality rate was 84 per thousand, an impressive 25 points lower. So this is great. We can get this. Those who learned showed improvement as far as the mortality rate is concerned. Showed the greatest change. Of course, this is true. We have got evidence for this. I'll straight away say yes, and the lines are here. If you want, you can just go to this particular site, miniielts.com/data, and this. I would like you to do this test once again, and this is very important that you do it on your own once you understand the strategies. See, the purpose of all this training, or whoever trains you, is to equip you with the right strategies, and once you understand the strategies, you need to apply them. Like, for example, what we are discussing here is how to figure out true false not given questions, and especially when there is a comparison of numbers given. So when they use these kind of numbers and there are groups, you can make use of this strategy to find out which group are we talking about and how we figure out the right answer. Of course, understand identifying the keywords, going to the line, reading it carefully, understanding, more focus on questions, less focus on passage. All these strategies are super important. The women who had learned to read through National Union had the lowest rates of child literacy. Now look at this. This is an extreme term, lowest, highest, and when such type of terms are used, usually you have to be very very clear, and you have to be very careful. So okay, fine. Let's see what exactly is this question saying. Women who had learned to read through this mission. So whatever crusade, those who attended the program, the result was that the infant mortality rate for them was the lowest. Lowest means lowest in the whole group. So let's see where does it talk about that same number. Rate was 84% per thousand. As you can see, those who attended the program, it went to 84 per thousand. But those who were literate from the beginning itself, like the ones who are educated as children, those women who got education when they were children, for them it is 80. So this is not lowest for sure. 84 is the eventual number they reached to, which was still higher than 80. So it wasn't lowest. 84 is not smaller than 80. Hence, as you can see, there is 80. So the comparison is happening between this 80 and 84 here. Yeah. So the answer is, of course, false. We have evidence for it that it is not the lowest. The lowest still remains for those women who got them educated when they were children. Alright, now the last question. After this crusades, the children of women who remained illiterate were found to be severely malnutritioned. Again, look at the selection of words. Severely malnutritioned. Severely is a very, very, extreme word. It's an adjective which makes malnutrition to be very exclusive. It's not like just malnutrition, it is severely malnutrition, which means they were not having any food to eat and they were not eating the proper food or whatever. So severely, if we have to have this evidence, then only we can say this is true. Otherwise the answer has to be false or not given. And usually for such kind of questions, the answer is, I should not say anything of this sort usually or whatever, because you have to check it on a case to case basis. Okay, fine. So let's try to understand. After National Literacy Crusade, so this program, children of women who remained illiterate, so for illiterate women, were found to be severely malnourished. So children were malnutrition. So where do they talk about nutritional thing related to children? I'll go to that particular line. I'm not really reading the paragraph. I'm just looking for a line where they talk about some kind of thing related to nutrition. Okay, here I see this line. As you can see, this particular line. The children, look at the top line. The children of newly literate mothers, were also better nutrition. So they are talking about newly literate mothers, they were better nutritioned than those who could not read, which means from illiterate as compared to illiterate women, the children of literate women were better nutritioned. So if the mother is able to read, she gives good food to the children, is what it means. But does it mean that those mothers who were not literate, their children were severely malnutritioned? Yes, no, maybe. We don't have any evidence for severely malnutrition. Severely is like a very specific term, hence the answer has to be not given. So what do we infer and what do we learn from this discussion? What we have learned is that whenever you do these true false not given questions, look for such extreme terms which make the whole statement very exclusive. Number 1. Number 2, look for evidence. If there is a strong evidence, then only you can say yes or no. Otherwise, go with not given. So this not given thing is a little tricky. Like the first question number 6 and question number 11, we were not having very clear evidence. If we don't have a very clear evidence, we have to say not given, not no. And this is how you can do these true false not given questions. Let me summarize the whole strategy for you. Number 1, do not pay too much attention to the passage. Try to understand the questions. Through the questions, try to guess the type of passage. Most of the time you would be able to make out something, and this requires, of course, some practice. Once you do at least 10 to 15 passages, you would be able to make out the nature of the passage by reading the questions themselves, and that is the time when you would become very fast and proficient in reading comprehension and these kind of questions. Number 2, paraphrase the question, identify the keyword, identify the nature of the question, identify which particular line in the passage are they referring to, and then answer the questions accordingly. Thank you so much. All the best to you. Hope this was useful to you.